what's the thing that stands out in your mind more than anything about yesterday's games?
It was Urban Meyer's comment when the ESPN reporter after the game said to him, "So what do you think about Oregon beating Florida State by 40?" And Urban went, 40? And he got up out of his chair and said, we need to start getting ready for that game. I think he probably already knew, and he possibly had been fed that answer by somebody from his sports information office. But I think that everybody was shocked that it was going to be a 40-point game, but it got totally out of hand. And I really thought the commentators were so wise in saying, Florida State quit. They quit in the fourth quarter. Well, guess what? Oregon was quitting because it was 40 points ahead. They were trying to run out the clock,
right,
but every time someone carried the football, he'd go 15 yards, and they couldn't help themselves from scoring. This game could have been 80. They could have scored 80 points.
It was utter devastation. I mean, it was just.
And I wrote you last night, I wonder if anybody can stop. You wonder how they lost a game in the year. How can anybody stop Oregon? And the other question that comes up in that is, and I did some research on this, is how in the world, and you probably don't know this out there, anybody, anywhere, and anybody in this room, that Mark Helfrich, who is the Oregon coach, everybody remembers Chip Kelly, and he put this in place when he took over there and brought in Mark Helfrich. Mark was the offensive coordinator from 2005 to 2008 at the University of Colorado.
Under Dan Hawkins.
Under Dan Hawkins. And you wonder why CU didn't recognize what was going on there. I'm sure that Dan Hawkins.
I've got that in here, but not till later.
Okay, all right. Well, so we can look forward to it.
Yeah, you brought up the Urban Meyer thing. You know what was funny about yesterday? I'm watching the post-game interview. First of all, one of the questions I would have asked him was, even though he won, all right, I still would have asked, what the hell were you doing throwing a bomb with less than 2 minutes to go when all you had to do was run the ball 3 times?
Well, let me answer that question as he would if he were here and he were being honest with you. What happened at that point, Alabama, with a stout defense, packed 9 or 10 guys in the box thinking they're going to run out the clock. That's what everybody would do with under 2 minutes to go. And he said, the hell with you. You know, we didn't come here just to try and run out the clock. We're going to show you something.
You know
so
what?
He throws it over the top.
That's fine, but
he's being aggressive. He's always been aggressive.
You know what? The time on the clock didn't call for bravado at that point. Just run the damn ball. Let the clock run.
You are so wrong. You know, when I first was introduced to Urban Meyer.
That's why he would never be an NFL head coach, by the way.
I was introduced to Urban Meyer, not formally, when Colorado State went to Utah in the season that Utah won every game.
Yeah.
Under Urban Meyer, Alex Smith was the quarterback out of the shotgun, and they beat Alabama in the bowl.
Uh-huh.
So he's beaten Alabama in the bowl before. They were in a situation to tie Colorado State and go into overtime, and they went for 2.
No, I know.
That's an Urban Meyer.
He's got cojones. I get it. But there was too much at stake. You run the ball 3 times. I'm sorry. You just do it. You run the ball 3 times.
But you also have some faith in your defense.
But if the ball's picked off, Wood, then Bama has yet another chance.
Why not?
I thought it was a bad move. The announcers agreed with me. I didn't like it.
I totally disagree with all of you. The announcers are going, oh, what a terrible mistake. I love it when Bart Starr, I go back to Bart Starr, when Bart Starr on 3rd and 1 would throw a bomb. I like that. Because you've got these
Lombardi let him throw on 3rd and 1?
You got these geniuses that are defensive coordinators who are saying, okay, they're going to run 3 straight plays, so let's pack everybody up there. Well, then the clock's going to roll, and you're not going to really have much time when you do get the ball back. So he's saying, I can put this away on this one play, and then I'll run after that.
Well, let's just agree to disagree. I'm running the ball 3 times. The most important thing is to run the clock out and get the win and move on to the championship game. Evidently, the most important thing to Urban Meyer was, I'm going to outfox you on this play. Come on. But the other thing that struck me about
Speaking of being outfoxed,
the post
I want to talk about that today.
The post game interview was, they're talking to Urban Meyer, and the reporter is sitting there with a smile on her face, and wasn't ever going to ask a tough question anyway. But when she said, how do you feel right now? He sounded as if he had just won like $5 in the lotto, and he's just going to tell her, well, take the $5 and put it towards next week's lotto. He didn't seem very excited at all, which is fine with me. I mean, he seemed like a very cool customer. I don't know Urban Meyer. You might know him better than
Yeah,
me.
I actually worked with him
But
for a little while.
he seems
was
like a
at
very
ESPN
cool
for a while.
customer.
And a guy that's a good friend of yours, Buddy Martin, who used to be the sports editor here at the Denver Post, and we're in a studio that's alongside the Denver Post editorial office. But Buddy Martin wrote a book about Urban Meyer and became very close friends with him down in Florida. And Buddy served as kind of an intermediary, and I got to spend some time with and got to know Urban Meyer. And I had, as I said, been introduced to him at Utah and was very impressed with him. And I thought, boy, this is a guy Colorado should go after.
Yeah.
That's what I really thought at the time. And I like the other thing, he serves barbecue to the players after the game. Instead of those, tuna sandwiches.
Yeah.
They had those
Orange slices.
Yeah, and stuff like that. They had a spread of barbecue that you couldn't believe. And I said, man, I like to be covering these guys all the time.
So I'm not a guy that says I told you so.
It's just my little inside stories
No,
for you that
that's fine.
entertain you. every
Barbecue.
once in a while.
I like barbecue.
Yeah. Go You're like mine. I do.
So you remember like 2 or 3 weeks before they decided on the Final Four, before the committee decided these are the 4 teams that are going to be playing. You asked me who I thought, we knew who 3 of the teams would be. We knew Alabama, Oregon, and Florida State would be 3 of the 4. We didn't know who the 4th one would be. Remember who I said?
Ohio State.
I said Ohio State. And I said it for this very reason, for what we saw yesterday.
But
who
did I say? We should just mention.
Did you say TCU?
TCU?
Yeah. You
could
have made a case.
Yeah,
They had an impressive bowl game too. But the reason
so
I
we were
said
both
that
right.
was
TCU would have beaten Alabama.
probably.
Yeah.
The reason I said Ohio State 2 or 3 weeks before it was decided that they'd be in the Final Four is because I was so impressed with what Urban Meyer had done there. First of all, that program had been under siege before he got there. So for him to turn things around so quickly is an incredible credit to him. Number 2, he was doing it with his 3rd string quarterback, which is unbelievable.
And that's why I wouldn't
unbelievable.
That's why I wasn't on your side in regard to putting them in the Final Four.
But they were winning despite the injuries to the quarterbacks.
Let's take it.
Which tells me how good they really were.
Let's take it a step further on both sides. He has not lost a conference game since he's been there. In the Big Ten, that's an incredible achievement.
It is.
Number 2, he doesn't really believe he's got his team yet. There's still about 20 guys in terms of depth and speed and quality.
From the last coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he really thinks that next year is when because next year they're going to have 2 of the 3 quarterbacks. The first one that got hurt is thinking about transferring.
I can't believe this kid is their 3rd string.
Yeah.
I mean, how good are the other 2?
Yeah.
I know this kid's a little unrefined, but what an athlete and what a specimen.
I think what was, you asked for my first impression, and I'm giving it to you late in this segment, but I think my first impression is Southeastern Conference was proven to be not as good as people like me who are from Southeastern Conference roots believed. Because not only did we see Alabama go down, but Mississippi State, and they were at the top all year. Ole Miss was floating around at the top. Auburn got beat too. So you're talking about 4 of the best teams in the SEC went down already in bowls. And so the SEC wasn't that strong, and you'd have to look at even though Baylor lost by a point in a great game, that Baylor and TCU representing the Big 8 or the Big 12, I should say, used to be the Big 8, that those are 2 strong teams, and the Big 10 wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Oregon was kind of what as a coach once said, who coached the Arizona Cardinals, Oregon was what we thought they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just have. They're the most fun team that I've ever watched in my life. I don't know of a team that I enjoy watching more because Florida State, on one of their big plays, Florida State, there wasn't even a penalty called. Florida State had 3 guys trying to get off the field, and you could see them in the replay, and nobody ever made reference to it. They couldn't get their fat butts off the field because they were trying to change their groupings, and Florida State just had no answer to anything they were doing.
Maybe the SEC. How many teams in the SEC now? I can't even keep track anymore. How many teams in the SEC?
14.
14? Really? That's an odd number.
They added Missouri and Texas.
It's an even number, but it's an odd number, 14.
Yeah.
They need 2 more teams. Anyway,
Why?
what I'm saying is the SEC is still an incredibly strong conference. From 1 to 14, very probably the best conference in the nation. It's just that we're finding out at the top, maybe they're not as strong as the Pac-12 is at the top with Oregon, or, you know.
To sum up, and I want you to be last on this, but to sum up, the SEC's not as strong as what we thought. Alabama really, after getting out, they didn't show me a lot of pithy emotion. They didn't show me great excitement. They were playing like a professional team. They were playing like somebody who really didn't have a great deal of emotion. And when they needed it, their quarterback Sims couldn't produce it. He could not produce it in 3 different situations. That I also look at Oregon and I wonder, how in the world is Urban Meyer going to come up a way? But here's the one thing that I did take at the end of the evening was Urban Meyer's coached the spread. If anybody knows an up-tempo spread,
Yeah.
he glamorized it, if you will, when he was at Florida. So that is going to make for such an interesting final championship game.
And Ohio State is a bigger team. They just look like men out there. I thought the Alabama-Ohio State game looked like a bunch of men going at each other, and the Oregon-Florida State game looked like a playground game. You know, more slightly built, faster, the whole deal. So the dichotomy between Ohio State and Oregon, it's going to be really interesting. And January 12th, right? January 12th. Is that a Monday?
Yeah, Monday night game. Yeah.
Okay.
And Jimmy Jones Palaces.
That's
And